Cool. All right, so yeah, like I was saying, your notes. If you need a notebook, I have a notebook. If you want to write it on a refill and you want to store it in clear pocket folders, I have them too. Just help yourself. If you're doing the notes online, remember there is a Google Doc for you to do that already. So dates should be written down. Learning intention should be written down. We are going to be exploring the relationship between phenotype, protein, and DNA. So if you remember in the last lesson, we thought big picture a bit about genetic variation. Now what we're going to do is start zooming into the cellular level, and then we'll start with all the molecular level. We'll do our first chunk of lessons on molecular. Then we'll move out to cellular, and then we'll move back out to thinking about population studies. Mahia today, let me show you where you can find it, because the Mahia on the first lesson that I see you in the week is going to be a little bit different. Don't worry, I will change the slide, but the LI is still on the board over here. Okay? Sorry, we'll be moving the slide, but you still got that. So, let's show you where to. And what I want us to do is to go to classwork. And what you will do is the weekly check-in. So, you will need your devices for this. Some of you guys are still doing notes on paper, and that's fine, but do make sure you have your device out for the first set of activities we will do today. So everyone has been assigned this weekly check-in, and what I want you guys to do for your Mahias the first week I see you is just to check in. I find it's really useful for me to build those relationships, and it's really useful for just kind of keeping track of how you're learning throughout the term. So we are only filling in this week row. The first question is, what did you learn last week? So I just want you to recap what you learned in biology last week. Really great for us to build weeks and weeks and weeks of content to see how it all ties together. The second thing I want you to do is set yourself a micro goal for the week. Now, when I say a micro goal, it doesn't need to be biology related. It doesn't need to even be academically or school related. It could be a personal goal, like I want to run 5Ks. This is useful for me because it tells me what else is on your plate, what else is on your agenda, because it may not be biology as your first call. The next one is a random question. This is just a fun way for us to get chit-chatting and for us to know each other better. I will post that question on the board. And then the last space here is just a space if you need to let me know anything. You don't have to answer it. You can leave it blank, but it's a good spot to just kind of talk to me in case you don't want to talk to me during class. Some of you guys might want to let me know, oh, my dog passed away. I'm really kind of feeling a little sad right now, or I got a new job and I'm really excited. It's just for you to share things with me if you feel like you want to. So I'll go back to the main PowerPoint slide, and later we will actually have a chance just to chat and share as a class. Good for relationship building. And then we'll actually move on to the lesson. And that's what I like to do for the first lesson of the week whenever I see you guys. So I'll put this back on the board. Attention, and complete the do now. You will need your device for the first chunk of today's lesson. All right. So I always like to start the lesson start the week with a little bit of a chit-chat kind of time, a little bit of a corridor time. I think it's really important for us to do this and to take our time to kind of connect before we start doing content, because it helps build those relationships in the class. I think a lot about Manakitana and how that's important for respect and generosity. And so I think it's really good for us just to have a moment just to share. So I like to pick people out randomly so that way the voices are equal. I've now started my jar of names, and usually whenever I have a question, I pull a name out and you can answer it. You're more than welcome to say, I don't know, or I don't have an answer for that. That's totally fine, and you get out of the jar. We go through and cycle through the whole class, and then once we cycle through the whole class, I reset the jar. So you only get picked once every so often. Usually I just use it a lot for the Mahias, just to kind of share voices and things like that. So I like to start with a random childhood toy that you had as a kid. Person answering that question today is going to be Sophia. Little Japanese. Oh, yeah? Cute. That's neat. Yeah. Yeah. That's adorable. I love the little Japanese kits that you have that you can like build the food. It's like a miniature food thing. It really entertains me. Zara, what about you? What's one of your kind of childhood toys? Pardon? Huh? Teddy bear. Oh, sweet. Classic. Teddy bears were only recently invented. It was like 1900s from Theodore Roosevelt, I want to say. So yeah, interesting that we only recently thought, let's stuff some toy bears. All right, micro goal for the week. So something that you're hoping to accomplish doesn't need to be academic, doesn't need to be school related. Person sharing is Presley. What's a micro goal you have this week? To pay attention in class. I think that's good, and it's kind of like our first official week of starting stuff. Next person is going to be Charlie. What about you? Not to talk out loud. Yeah, good. Lots of stuff to help us kind of keep focused and do well. Before we move on, does anyone else want to share this thing? Just like I said, it's a little quote time. It's a chance for us to kind of sit and chit chat before we dive into the content. So I guess we're ready to dive into content, is my understanding. All right, something has not worked. Let me fix that on my PowerPoint. That annoy me. Cool. All right. Come on, computer. You can do this. All right. So now that we have a chance to kind of chit chat, we need to switch gears and start thinking about our learning journey. So like I said, I like to give us a chance to connect with each other. We should connect before content. We are all on this learning journey together. The way I really like to think about this is that we're all on the walk together, and we all need to cooperate and work well, so that way the walk moves forward and we get to our destination. The other thing I like to think about is this African proverb, which looks at thinking about destinations. So if you want to get to a destination fast, go alone. It's very easy to work by yourself and just get there and be really efficient. But if you want to go further, then you should be going together because you can all collaborate and help each other get to that endpoint. And I really want us to think about that as a class. And so we shouldn't be derailing each other. We should really be supportive of each other. So just to summarize last week, we looked at the big picture of what is genetic variation. And we also talked about some of the benefits. The main way we did that was through that little Buzzy McDonald activity. And we were thinking about bugs and the variation of the bugs and what would happen if natural events started killing them. Today, what I want us to look at now is, now that we have the big picture, I want us to zoom in and understand the reasons why. So we're going to look at protein, and we're going to look at DNA. We talked about phenotype previously. So that's what the focus is for today's lesson. All right. And also, this is my first kind of lesson of the week. I thought it'd be nice to share a weekly Baka Poki. I've gotten this from this book called Oroha, which I thought is really nice. It kind of shares modern wisdom. And in this case, this week, we have Kupitia Te Hopo, which is to banish your fears, feel the fear, and do away from it. So it's going to be quite scary and overwhelming, I think. Learning all this new material at level 2 is a big jump from level 1, but we're not going to let our fear stop us. Cool. Lesson plan for today then. First thing I want us to do is get a survey of what external you guys are planning to take. This helps us issue out which side has to give you. Then you guys will have a chance just to do some more exploring around genetic diversity. There's a link to a website I want you guys to check out and answer some questions just to kind of think about it as a big picture thing. Once you have some big picture ideas, we're going to start looking at the actual content. We'll look from phenotype to proteins. You guys will have a little break to see a SciPad page on protein structure. Then we'll go proteins to DNA. And then again, another little break for you guys to think about the DNA structure. There's a video I want to show you guys on the discovery of DNA. I think it's a really interesting history. And then lastly, we'll finish off with the conclusion. So fun activities tend to be at the end because I want to keep us just schedule. All right, success criteria. I didn't get to pass that last time, so I didn't write it, but I now have wrote it down. So, to be successful at the end of today's lesson, you should be able to define the following terms, which is hereditary, genetics, and trait. You should also be able to explain how genetic diversity is beneficial to survival. I will put an online version of this on if you guys want to do this online instead of on paper. It doesn't have that around to it. So you probably when you guys are working, I'll put an online version so you guys prefer to take off your agenda there. All right, some of them you can actually kind of already start to do because we have done it in our previous lesson. So what I want you guys to do is tick off in the covered in class column, number 1 and number 23. We're jumping a little bit ahead because I wanted us to look big picture. At the end of class, we will check if you feel like you understand that material or produce some work. On the back is some specific assessment criteria. So achieve merit and excellence. I had a look at the marking schedule and got a gauge of what they're looking for at different levels and quality of answers. And that will help you determine what you need to do in order to get and achieve merit or excellence. Sound good? Right to go? Okay. So first thing on my agenda is thinking about what standards you want to do. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because I want us to think about, I want us to know what side paths to give you. So let me show you the survey, which is on Google Classroom. And then I can also talk about the second activity if you finish early. So on the stream for Google Classroom, I've put an announcement for the external standards survey. And you're going to click that. It will take your email address, but just in case there's something that goes funky, I want your names just so I can match people up. Now, here are some things to keep in mind when we are looking at these externals and which ones you might want to do, and you can't see because there's nothing on my board. I apologize. Let me duplicate that. So, there are external that are offered at level 2 biology. The only one that we will probably have time to teach in class is the first one up here, Bio 2.5, which is genetic variation and change. This is the topic that we are on right now. There are 2 other standards, and I just need to know if you are interested in taking them because that will help me decide whether or not to whether to give you just a booklet, just a side pad with this standard, or if I should give you a side pad with all the standards for the external. Does that make sense to everybody? So the one that we are going to all do together in class is that genetic variation and change, that first one. That second one on life processes at the cellular level, some of that material will be taught because we need to teach it for you guys to do the microscopes standard, but it won't all be taught. So there is going to be some responsibility for you to learn the rest of the material, but the teacher is always able to support you in learning that material. We may not have class time to cover it all. Last one is on gene expression. It probably won't get taught in class. Again, your responsibility to learn it if you want it, but there's always teacher support. So what I need you guys to do is fill in this survey so that way I know if you're just planning to take the standard external that we offer or if you wanted to do some more. And then that helps me decide what side types to give you. Does that make sense? So that is the first thing on the agenda. When you finish that, you can go ahead and start moving on to our first activity, which is exploring genetic diversity. There's a website that I want you to read and some questions for you to answer. And that just helps you think about genetic diversity in the big picture. So that link would be here. And you see the link to that activity. Does that sound good? Cool. I'll leave this slide up with the questions. Complete the Google form. select the external. And then this is step number 2 when you finish. And you can answer this question either on a piece of paper or in that Google Doc showing evidence of understanding. First off, what we said really great work today. You guys basically worked on the exploring genetic diversity test for like the most of the period. It wasn't my intention, but that's totally good and that's totally fine because I want you guys to think big picture before we start looking at the specifics on the why and the how. So great work today. I'll give you guys some coffee beans. I'll give you a nice big handful. You all work so quietly and great. And a lot of you guys finished the task. So we will pick this up in our next lesson and we'll start talking about phenotypes and proteins. The projector, you'll actually be able to see it. Explore the relationship between phenotype, protein, and DNA. We did a little bit of exploring. We mainly looked at phenotypes and the big picture of the genetic variation. And you guys looked a little bit into DNA today. We were talking about the variation in the nucleotide sequence. We talked about, a 2% difference kind of thing, or 20% difference. So we did look at some of that today, but we will finish this in our next lesson. For our success criteria, you guys should hopefully start being able to define some of these terms. And you should also be able to explain that genetic diversity and how that benefits. There's the box here. If you want me to hold on to your lollipops or your boxes, there's a clear pocket folder for bio. You can tuck it in there. Cool. All right, we'll stop there. We'll continue this in our next lesson.